Hello and welcome everybody. It's can you believe it? Season 2, episode 22. I can't believe how far we've come already this year. And this episode is being, I suppose, it's me as your host, Susie von Mensenkamp, and we have a very special guest joining us from the UK. And the title of the episode is Magna Carta 2.0. We wanted to make something special for our final episode together. And so this episode is about imagining a new charter for the soul of humanity. And for that, we invited some previous guests. We had invited Flo Magdalena back. Unfortunately, she just at the last minute couldn't make it. But gracefully, we have the company and lovely presence of Sue Cooper, who's based in Nottingham in the UK. She was a former guest of ours, I think back in March, one of the early episodes, definitely at the beginning of this season. And Sue, just to give you, if you haven't watched Sue already on the show, Sue is a mindfulness and meditation teacher. She's an Ayurvedic Lifestyle Educator with a passion for science and the art of holistic, integrative care practices. So she's the founder of MOMM, Moments of Mass Mindfulness, and self-care world. And so she's really interested in this kind of, I suppose, initiatives that are rooted in self-care. So we're going to catch up with Sue. We're going to find out, what has been evolving for her over the course of the last few months in what has been a very interesting year for many people who are either watching or listening. So a super warm In12D welcome to you, Sue. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me on again. When I was with you, I think it was episode 1 actually of this series. I think the story was about the story of what brought me into the spiritual world. So this is an absolute joy to be able to share what's happened over the last few months. So thanks for inviting me.
That's what I've been loving about what we have been bearing witness to with the different conversations that we've had, very conscious, compassionate conversations with many of our amazing guests on In12D. And one of those was Flo Magdalena, who, if you remember, she's a spiritual guide and author and the founder of Soul Support Systems. And what seemed to come about soon after that was this collaboration between both yourself and Flo. Do you want to give us a little backstory, a short one, just an intro to how did that collaboration come to be?
I met Flo in 2014 when she came to Nottingham to talk about her book, I Remember Union. And we got chatting, and I was very grateful to Flo because we talked about something that there was a commonality in speaking about self-care and the return to wholeness. And she said, I need to introduce you to somebody that I think will lead you forward. And she connected me, and that person did lead me forward, and they invited me to be a speaker at a big event, a big arena in in Birmingham called the NEC. It's like, oh my goodness! Suddenly I had to, step up, and I gathered my courage and went. And it was very successful. And from there, I met a lot of other fantastic speakers. And I was hugely grateful to Flo. And then I didn't see Flo again for until in the last couple of months, really. I know that a couple of my friends know Flo very well. And I reached out to her again because she had written a book in 2019 called The Power of Grace, The Light Magnificent and the Power of Grace. I don't know if that will show in the right direction. If you can read that.
Great book. I read it myself. It really is inspirational. Yeah.
Yeah. And you've reminded me a few times, Susie, when we've had our talks, read that book again. And so the book was gifted to me by a great friend. And then I gifted the book onto a few people. And then we started talking about it. And the book is about a man from the 1100s called William Marshall. And Flo, I'll explain William Marshall because it feels an important part to this talk. So William Marshall was born about 1167, I think, and died in 1219. So he was good age when he and had a very good long life. And he was the advisor to 5 kings. I think it was
Wow.
Henry II, Richard the Lionheart, Henry II and the young Henry, he was called, Richard the Lionheart, King John of the, we know him through the Robin Hood myths, and the young son of King John, Henry III. And Henry III, when he took the crown, because John died in 1216, was only 9. So William Marshall not only was an advisor and a knight and a Knights Templar, but he became, for a period of 3 years, the regent, which to the young king, because he was too young to actually, he took the throne, he took the crown, but he needed an adult, and he was a trusted advisor. So he was actually the king. And his name hasn't been written out of history, but it's kind of hidden. So there's a need, I sense, to recognise and acknowledge and bring this name forward as a living entity who lived by light. He had divine consciousness. He was graceful. He loved his wife desperately and said that she was the power behind him. So he was the main baron knight who led the other 24 knights and barons in our country, in England, to persuade King John to sign the Magna Carta.
So let's just get some clarity on the Magna Carta, like how important that document, like it's an 800-year-old document from what I can gather, and it was originally an ancient pact between the people and the powers that were like the monarchy, I suppose, at the time. But it was about honoring the earth and, you know, what the land offers us, access to land and hunting and fishing and things like that. Is that correct?
Well, that's the Charter of the Forests. So but you're right, Susie. The first Magna, and I've done a huge amount of research in this, and I've got confirmation from the National Archives, so I know that this is accurate. But the first Magna Carta was sealed by King John in the 15th of June, 1215, accepting the terms of the Magna Carta. And I'll tell you what those are, actually. So it's the rule of law. And some of these are relevant today, if we think about it. The rule of law. The king is subject to the rule of law. No one person, man, woman, is above the law. Fair taxation. So there has to be consent for taxes, because he was just putting up taxes ad hoc. And I seem to think taxes and tariffs have a familiarity here. The third point was justice for all, right to a fair trial, because in the day, the king had the power to put you to death. So everybody deserved freedom to a fair trial. In these days, in 1215, the rights of the church dominated, and it was the Pope, and the king and the Pope together, actually. I beg your pardon. So it was freedom from royal interference. So the king and the Pope became joint collaborators in this country, and protection from illegal imprisonment. So these are big ones, you know, innocent until proven guilty, rather than just being taken straight to incarceration. So John signed that under, it wasn't against his will, because he did it, but he wanted it revoking pretty quickly. And within 10 weeks, the Pope had sent letters, they're called papal bulls, declaring the Magna Carta was null and void. So in civil war then broke out within a matter of weeks between King John and the barons, the 25 barons, including William Marshall. And then within a year, King John has died of dysentery, which meant that the young heir, aged 9, was crowned. And then from that period, he was crowned on the 28th of October, 1216. And within a year, the second version of the Magna Carta was agreed and sealed by Henry III with William Marshall as regent. And at the same time, sorry, this was 1217. At the same time, they issued something called Charter of the Forest. And this was that nobody was allowed in the forest except the king and those people that he said could go in the forest.
Mm-hmm.
The forest was about 70% to 80% of the land in this country, which meant that the people couldn't enter the forest. If they did, they would be either incarcerated, they would be maimed, or they would be killed. But of course, most of the food was in the forest, the berries on the trees, the animals in the forest. So the king had access to hunting, and those he allowed, but the average person didn't. And that was then put in as Charter of the Forest, that each man is free and can enter the forest. So it was a huge time of William Marshall leading this in 1217. William Marshall died in 1219, and the third Magna Carta was signed or sealed, I can't remember if it was signed or sealed, by Henry III in 1225. So the first Magna Carta were with those key points. The next were just little tweaks, little amendments to it, but the main body of it still stood. Now, what I find really fascinating is that, having talked about the Magna Carta and William Marshall for quite a long period of time, and I'll come back to flow, but a Magna Carta suddenly appeared at Harvard University only a matter of a couple of months ago. And it turns out, and I think I'm correct here, it was the 1225 version of the Magna Carta, which had been purchased for something like 40 English pounds,
Mm-hmm.
and in 1940 something, and kind of just put away. And it's been authenticated by a number of sources that it is an authentic original document, which has opened up a lot of interest now, because not only is this document in America, but it's the fundamental document, the original one for the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Human Rights, and various other Earth Charters. It's the fundamental document that underpins all others. So that's the Magna Carta. But if I go back to flow, is that okay to just follow that?
Yeah, because it's good that you've given us such a really good kind of foundational kind of framework for the origins of the document and what was happening, the era, the medieval times in which it was created. And now I suppose we're going to see how it's always living through us as us, and through Flo's connection with William Marshall, which she did allude to when we had her on the show, as would you call it a channel for William Marshall, or how would you describe it? Pity we don't have Flo to speak for it herself, but I think you'll do a nice job of that.
Well, honouring that I get it correct, but it's certainly the essence is correct. So Flo, which is all written in this book, The Light Magnificent and the Power of Grace, Flo was on a journey with a couple of friends to the cave of Mary Magdalene. So she'd flown in from America into England and was then flying out from England to France. And then a huge volcano erupted in Iceland, stopping all air traffic. And I remember it well because I was stranded in South America. So if we go back to that time, I think many of us, if we were away from home, would actually remember that time. Mm-hmm. So she had to hire a van and get a ferry and drive across France. So an American driving an English van in France is not an easy thing to do, because you've got steering wheels on the wrong side, and etc. So she's over in France, and according to what Flo tells me, and that's in this book, her passengers recognised that there was an entity, a being, actually in the car with them, who introduced himself as William Marshall. She didn't know anything about William Marshall, and he proceeded to accompany them on their 17-hour drive through France to Mary Magdalene's cave, and the whole transcript of that is in this book. So having read the book a number of times, as have you, Susie, and as a lot of friends, and we've talked about it a lot in our communities, our spiritual communities, we decided that it would be a good idea, knowing that this Magna Carta was raising its head again. I'd been asked by Charter for Compassion to look at the charter that is currently in existence from 2009. And I reached out to Flo. And I said, I don't know if you remember me, but we met in 2014, blah, blah, the preamble, and thanked her with grace for the introduction that led me forward. And does she still have communication with William Marshall as a long shot? And within a couple of hours, and she's in America, in Vermont, she'd replied to me and said, yes, I do. I am very interested in what you're talking about. It seems very aligned. I've created and hold a group intentional space every month with the voice of William Marshall coming through into the space. And there's about 40 people from predominantly America, Canada, and the UK who meet and have held space for this message for all this period of time. So
just before we continue, just to clarify, so they've been holding the space, they've been receiving this information, I suppose meditating on it or contemplating it, integrating it in some way, embodying it perhaps in their wake, walking through their day to day. And so a message has been kind of building up. Would that be kind of fair comment?
Yes.
And so then you come along kind of as out of nowhere, as it would seem. However, you've also been on your kind of William Marshall journey, and I know I've accompanied you on many parts of that too, because William Marshall also spent time in Ireland. But so it's almost like these groups, these small collectives are being kind of drawn or magnetized towards each other, which I think amplifies the message a little bit more. Like, so it brings more cohesion maybe, or coherence to the messages. So where was Flo and her group when you connected with them, in terms of what had they kind of gleaned from the years and months that they've spent connecting with him?
Because I've not been part of the group until recently, and Flo's been very generous sending me recordings of the last few months, it would appear that they are very clear that William Marshall's energy is still very present and guiding. Flo channels, I think that's the right term, the messages that comes when she moves into a coherent space. And the messages are that grace is always present, grace is divine, that we hold this beautiful light within us. We each have a light body. It comes from the heart. And it's the earth is calling us. They talk about, there's a large crystal in the Irish Sea, which they plant their imaginal feet on as they move into meditation. The light comes down and into each of our beings as the group are meditating together, and they hold the space for what I class as holistic stewardship. That the seen we know, the unseen is still very present with us in our conscious awareness, and there are guides, and William Marshall being the guide in this instance, which is leading us forward into more light, more grace, more divinity, spirituality, holding our own frequency, because we're each unique beings. But what is the frequency that we can hold so that we can express our whole beautiful self and be seen and listened to, and feel that experience that we're each here with a purpose, and that purpose can, for this particular iteration, manifest into a beautiful, compassionate document that's a living document that we can all enter into, as what the unseen is guiding the seen through the cosmos and the earth, through our hearts. So I hope I've explained that okay.
Let's just backtrack so that we are really clear at this point, because I don't want to lose our listeners, because it is there are just layers and layers to the story, and there's, you know, where people enter into it at different points in time. So, and we're trying to build up that picture, and I think you're doing an amazing job of that, Sue. So I really appreciate that. So, you know, you were talking about holistic stewardship. And so, like, you've been following your guidance and, you know, inspired by the book that Flo had written. Flo's been following her guidance, which went from the book to, you know, continuing with this monthly group. Then let's bring in the other angle, which is the request from the charter for you to review that, and to, you know, maybe, I think are you amending it, or you're kind of, you know, not fully rewriting it, but I think you're just reviewing it and with making some amendments, I guess. And though it's like each step of your journey, you know, as you, from where we left you in March, has, you know, crumb by crumb or bean by bean brought you along. And meantime, from the other side of the pond, you know, Flo's been kind of going along, and so something came together when you had this collaboration and the sharing and the ideas and and again, it's not like one of you knows more than the other, or one of you is in charge or leading it. It's really a co-creation, to bring us as, you know, maybe it's a humanity or a collective soul group together for, you know, to really receive and deliver maybe the message of that light within, that
Yes.
guiding force. Force seems too harsh a word. It's so subtle, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a power, isn't it?
Mm.
It's a very gentle, soft power that is within each of us, and we look externally, don't we, for that power to be given, or, you know, the opinions of others, the belief of others. But I really, really know through personal experience that by bringing oneself into a place of care, self-care, compassion, kindness to self, which automatically leads to kindness to other, and coherence. So the coherent patterns of bringing our whole mind, body, emotion, spirit into that alignment, which we do with meditation. We're not seeking to do anything in meditation other than to move into flow. And then through that we get greater clarity. We get the inner knowing, that inner guidance system, as I call it. So what happened was, over the years, probably the last 5 years only, I've been very present to compassion, particularly with my nursing background. You know, compassion heals. Compassion helps us feel again. The empathy that goes with that, it's a feeling state. So as I've done some various talks, I was introduced to Charter for Compassion, and a charter was written in 2009 by a British theologian, an author called Karen Armstrong. And this, and I can explain a little more if you'd like me to, what the Charter for Compassion, the key parts of.
I think that would be this is a good time now for that, just
Okay.
so that we have some clarity around the different concepts or the aspects of this.
Yeah. So the charter was written after Karen Armstrong gave a TED talk, and it was the first monetarized TED talk in 2009 on compassion, and she won. She won $100,000.
Wow.
But most importantly, she was granted a wish. What can the TED organization facilitate her desire for a more compassionate world? And she said, I would like a charter for compassion to be devised. So it was early days of the internet, 2009, and the TED organization had put the wish on the internet, and they received 185,000 messages about what a charter for compassion could look like.
Wow.
From there, a small group, I think there was about 12 people who called themselves, or who were called the Council of Conscience, came together and pulled out the key threads out of that. And involved in that also were the Dalai Lama, Desmond Tutu, Nelson Mandela, the voices of those who had actually risen up through great hardship. And actually live a compassionate life. So the main points of the Charter for Compassion that came about, which was ratified by the United Nations and actually hangs in the United Nations, are primarily the Golden Rule, which is treat others as you would like to be treated, which runs through all religious traditions and also all Indigenous wisdoms. That's the first one. The second one is promotion of justice and equality, the importance of justice, fairness, and equal dignity, which kind of mirrors in the Magna Carta. Personal responsibility, cultivating compassion in daily life and in institutions, condemnation of violence and hatred, so non-violent communication, global interconnection, fostering understanding and connection between people, and compassion in action, alleviating suffering and promoting others' well-being. So that is really beautiful. And again, I can see, having this opportunity to pull these pieces together, it's like, oh, there's such a beautiful picture that's emerging. So whilst these founding documents are founding documents and they are honoured and respected as founding documents, what is the present society seeking as a charter that holds, that sits well within our own being, our own hearts, that we can share with each other as action, then share in community, and then move into community and ask people who are in a position of influence, power, maybe hold the money, the civic societies, the mayors, people who are conscious businesses within a community, the citizens, the people, the majority of it, and those faith communities and charities. How can we come together in our communities and become more compassionate, move into heart-based systems rather than to activate from that place, listen to the voices of everybody, and particularly those who are building a future, the youth voice, the children, those yet to be born. Obviously, we can't hear their voices, but we know that we are building something that doesn't take away from the main documents, because they are sacred, because they've been agreed. But how can we actually activate ourselves, each other, our communities, and Mother Earth, not forgetting the ecological wellness of the earth, which is really important, because without that, and our mother is suffering, and we, within this holistic stewardship, need to be very conscious and present to that. And if we each awoke and did our our small part, if we each find out what's in our hearts, and then have at least another to share within our family or within our soul family, that may not be your biological family, we could start to network. And that's the thing, is how do we network? How do we find each other in our communities? Then how do we find community networking with community? And we rise up as a conscious collective to move into, what's this world going to look like? Instead of it coming from power down, obviously policies will need to change, to reflect the grassroots movement. But I actually believe that we can magnetize this to make this happen if we all give voice to what it is that is waiting to be shared. And some of that will be in the charter, some of it will be in local communities.
So just before you continue, I just want to clarify again for listeners, because you've done such a wonderful job of, giving us the backstory as well for the Charter of Compassion, for compassion, should I say, dating back to 2009. And so what were they requesting of you? What's your role there? And how does that combine with what, the interaction with Flow Magdalena and, your work as within your own community? What's that?
It's emerging.
Yeah.
I must say that being with the unseen is something that is fairly new to me. And it's something, with all the different courses that, we've been on, Arts and Consciousness, with the Findhorn community and subtle activism, it's something that I'm becoming more familiar with myself. So accepting that there are guides and helpers, whether you want to believe that or not, it must be your own journey. However, what is really inherent in this is that we each hold a power and a light within us, and that when we move into fear, there is a density. And we look through these eyes with a different perception that the world is fearful. But as we start to work with our own self-compassion is incredibly important, to be kind to ourselves. We start to, and we find other people to do that with, even more powerful. We start to move into a place of seeing the beauty that actually exists within life, and knowing that we can each do a little bit of something to make this place a better place to live and to work and to be. So I don't know if I've answered your question, Susie, because I've gone.
Well, I suppose what I'm trying to kind of weave into your story is, what has the Charter for Compassion got to do with the collaboration between yourself and Flow, when you've been kind of bringing both of your communities have come together online? And I know you've met a few times together, and you're just tuning in, and people are, feeling what it means for them and asking questions and contemplation around it. Where does the Charter come into that? Can you just bridge those two parts somehow?
Yes, thank you. It's all one. There is actually very little difference between the Charter for Compassion and the Magna Carta, because we're coming from a place of individual freedom, equality and justice, and the interconnectivity of all life. Now, the Magna Carta is one which was giving the people power, giving them rights which they never had before, because the monarchy was the power over. Sometimes in some state that hasn't changed, and it's becoming in certain countries and communities even more obvious. So it's the awareness that this charter was written 810 years ago, and the Charter for Compassion that was only written 16 years ago. They are mirroring each other and to start having the conversations again, because there's so many people doing this work. So many of us doing it individually, so many people in their networks, to simply have the awareness that we are not stuck. We do have choices. We do have freedoms. We are coming from a place of deep care, kindness and compassion, mostly in our day-to-day work and life.
Yeah.
But we kind of need to find each other.
Yeah, like I suppose when I sit and think about it, because there's a lot of moving parts even in this conversation, it really comes down to the basics of, weaving the sacred back into the charter. And I think life has become so busy, and our attention has been so dispersed amongst so many different things. We've lost the ability to sit and contemplate a lot of where we are in our lives, and just how powerful each one person is. Each one creates the collective or the community, and everyone is as valid as each other. There's no one, as you said, taking over, or we're all equal. And I think the missing link, or what's kind of been phased out a lot in the last, I don't know how long, 50 years, as technology has been kind of building, is we've disassociated from the sacredness of who we truly are, and we've disconnected from that. And this unseen realm that you're referring to is available for everybody, in my personal opinion. And it's through practices, like you said, mindfulness, meditation, contemplation, coming together in these communities, having these conversations, which really shed a lot of light and hope and bring a bit more love into the space between us, because we could be racked by fear right now with what's going on. There's a lot going on. And it just depends on which side of the coin you're looking at it. But I do feel like it's like bringing the sacred back into a new charter, because we are a collective soul of human beings. Yeah, like there's a collective soul group here working and finding each other, recognizing each other. And as you said, it may not necessarily be your direct family or in your place of work, but people are really finding each other. A little bit how you and Flo's story, I think, is beautiful. It's just like coming full circle, how you met back when you did and coming back round again. And you were both on your individual, missions or paths, and they cross again and again. And the fact that you've recognized that, I think, is really what's very powerful about your story today, what you're sharing with us today.
Yeah, and it's things happen in our lives, good, not so good. But there's when we keep becoming more courageous, and I often say, courage can't be given to you by anybody else. It has to be generated within. And I remember when I was standing on that stage at the NEC in Birmingham, it's like my inner voice was going, "What the heck are you doing here?" But the other one was that I have a message to share, and I hope that maybe a few people hear it and heed it, and again teach what you most need to learn yourself. Has a huge impact. But what I really do know is that when we are deeply listened to, if we find another to really deeply listen to us and maybe reflect back, not to fix, but to reflect back, this is what we call dynamic circles of care. And when we are held in a heart-centered space, a compassionate space, where we're loving, and when we're in community, and there's understanding, something happens, and something deep from within is given voice. And when we're looking for a solution-based approach to the information overload we get externally, and not ignoring it, but choosing to consciously step away from it and to form these dynamic circles of care with a couple of other people, or maybe Lynn McTaggart talks about circles of 8, being optimum, however many, And that heart-based resonance is brought into it through a beautiful heart-centered meditation. And then you listen and you have dialogue and everybody's equal. Some incredible solutions are imagined. And imagination is something that you and I talked about over the last few days, wasn't it? To actually, this is a superpower, which kind of gets lost in the fear and gets lost in the overwhelm of the digital technology, to move back into the ability, which is a uniquely human ability, to move into what could be possible and imagine, and maybe dream circles. Again, just doing it with fun and with joy, and not becoming too analytical and intellectual about these things, as the wisdom the indigenous cultures did. Sit in circle, dream weavers, imaginal realm. Everybody from the youngest baby to the eldest person, the grandmothers, all were included. They all had a place, and I really believe that this is an opportunity. The charter is the vehicle, I believe, that's enabling me to have these conversations. But there's so much more to it, isn't it? It's how can we make a charter an active, living, compassionate document? And there always will be friction. I mean, that's great, because challenges bring attention for novel solutions to arise. But it's really about now building a future for hearing the voices of everybody, but particularly those whose future is being shaped at this moment. And that shaping must come from love, and it must come from inclusivity, and it must come from freedom to be able to express with integrity and respect and discernment. That's the message.
That's it. That's so beautifully expressed, really eloquently. And I think that's what we're about here in 12D. This mission has been evolving over the last kind of 12, 18 months. And we're really about bringing together those visionary voices, because what I've noticed in the pattern of all the conversations we're having here is that, most of us are just remembering, who we truly are at our in terms of our true nature, not the ego encapsulated personalities that we've formed to survive on this, or whatever is happening on this planet. But really, when we take the time to connect with nature, meet like-minded people, do spiritual practices, and I think communing with nature for me is one of the most powerful, because it brings me back into resonance, into coherence, and coming from that place where there's a stability and there's a steadiness that can come through your nervous system when that happens. And I truly believe that we are the ones that we've been waiting for, and that's where visionary and creative solutions occur, not from the level that they were created, but from somewhere beyond that. And as you were quoting, we were driving in the car yesterday when I was in the UK, about that Einstein quote about imagination being much more important, because we have to imagine our way out of this, playfully, with courage, and maybe for our last quarter of this, incredible conversation. I've really enjoyed it so far, Sue. We can talk a little bit about that from the individual's perspective. What does that look like? You talked about dream weavers, you talked about, circles, communication circles, spaces, within your city, within your community, maybe within your family circles or whatever. Have you got a vision for that? Can you see it? And then when it comes down to each individual within those organizations, are there practices that you could, or something in a toolkit perhaps that you might suggest, or you've witnessed yourself?
Yeah, well, this is right up my street. I'm so passionate about the integrative health and well-being model. We know that at one time it was we have the allopathic, the medical model, but then it was the alternative, and then it moved to complementary. as it gained momentum. And now it's to be voices of the integration, so that if we're in a situation which is an acute situation, we certainly need that care and attention within the emergency services. However, day to day, if we can start to manage and be more responsible for our own well-being, health, behaviours, with awareness and kindness, then well-being is a skill. And how can we remember to skill up? I'm from the generation where, we didn't have the snacks and the sugary stuff. It was like meat, what you say, meat and two veg. And good home cooking, which there weren't the pesticides and the chemicals then. So, but we didn't have the range of food. So it's really starting to feel into again what sort of habits, behaviours that we have that make us feel well. And that's really starting to learn to feel again, isn't it? So I've just got a little acronym which I use, and I use on myself most of the time, which is NESS. So when I think of mindfulness and gratefulness and awareness, NESS. And to move into what we call coherence, which is alignment, the first N is nutrition, and to become really aware of what we are ingesting. So it's not saying you can't have anything, it's just saying notice what you're eating, and does it fill you with energy? And do you feel awake after you've eaten, or do you feel sleepy, or do you feel unwell, or do you have the sugar rush? So it's not demonizing anything, it's starting to notice what suits you, that energizes you, and what doesn't. So within the Ayurvedic framework, as you well know, it's eating rainbow foods, eating natural, locally sourced foods as far as possible, and steering away more from the brown, beige, processed foods and stuff out of packets. So that is very basic. The E I see of NESS as exercising for energy. And to find an exercise that really inspires you, because we need to move these muscles. We need to strengthen our bones. We need to be able to, stand up straight, and because we're all so many of us, our heads are forward now when we're crouched over the computer. That's fine, but just actually keep realigning ourselves. And there's some incredible science that's coming out from the what do they call it? It's pharmaceuticals, all this information about resonance with sound and light, different healings, that when we are energized and move around, what actually happens to our cells in the repair process. And this is the new sciences that are coming through. So
is it like the movement is stimulating the repair mechanisms on a cellular level? So I suppose it's keeping that prana, that energy, moving in the system, so that it keeps regenerating itself and repairing naturally. Because it's an inside job, isn't it? Whenever we're out of balance, whether it's like low energy or not feeling 100% mentally or emotionally, or physical, like illness as well. Like the healing happens from within. It's not outside. You don't have to source it outside of yourself. You might need outside kind of support in terms of advice and some education around it. But ultimately, I always say, tune in and feel into it yourself. And I love empowering people about that, to really grasp what's going on, on whichever layer of our being is kind of throwing us off balance. So that's your E. What's your S?
The first S is stress relief and release. And we do know now through the lens of science that inflammation is caused by stress because of the raised cortisol, and the suppression of the other hormones, and the fight flight. So it's practices and awareness of triggers that cause stress, and owning them. again, back to being responsible for your own self, and blaming others for how you feel may serve, but most of the time it's people maybe say something to you and they walk away happily and you're left with this residue. But it's the, what is it, Nelson Mandela says, it's drinking poison that might kill somebody else, it's actually killing yourself. So
yeah, it's expecting the other person to die or something, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's awareness of triggers for stress, and there's no better medication than meditation. And that may be meditating by yourself. It may be prayer, depending on your faith. And the beautiful thing about religious observances is usually it takes place in community. And one of my aims is through the moments of mass mindfulness, the MOMM, is to bring together people who are meditating in community mindfully, and then all the contemplative practices, whatever it is that suits, but being aware that once we move our mind and body and emotions into alignment, then it releases happier hormones. It also doesn't suppress the immune system. And when we talk about healing is, as you say, the inside job. We go externally for cure, which is symptom control, but we need to really go to root cause, and that's what the S, stress relief, does. And then the last S is sleep.
Yeah, this is my favorite bit. I love oh my God, I'm so fascinated. I'm studying sleep and dreaming at the moment. I'm doing a lot of research on it, a lot of little mini experiments, and it's I feel like it's an untapped resource. And I know when we were driving to the airport yesterday, we talked a bit about it. And honestly, even just talking about it for me just shifted me into this kind of like, wow, where can we go with this? Like if we're doing dream workshops or, dream salons and things like that. So please expand more on sleep, because everybody sleeps every night. Like, so, what have you got to say?
That's the beauty of it, isn't it? That we all sleep each night. Therefore, there's between 7 and 8 hours of an opportunity to rest and restore and have beautiful dreams. Some of it is kind of like doing your mental filing, isn't it? And it's not for me. And again, we had this conversation. Sleep is really important, but it's the preparation for sleep. And having little children in my life, little grandchildren, seeing the routine that the parents do so that they get a full, nourishing, beautiful night's sleep, which is, an earlier fresh supper, tea, a little bit of downtime, maybe watching a bit of telly or a chat or play in the garden, then a bath, and then getting into a nice warm cozy bed and a hug and something to read that nourishes, that maybe stimulates the imagination as well, rather than gives you more fear, and then settling down into sleep, into a beautiful rested sleep, away from screens. So what is it that each one of us needs for that? So again, not demonizing anything, but moving into a pattern where in that next 7 hours, 8 hours, my goodness, something beautiful can actually move into one's consciousness from the subconsciousness.
Absolutely. Like I feel like there's a point, obviously, somewhere along the line, and as we're growing up, from when you're a child, where at the age where somebody has to put you to bed, or make sure that you're ready for bed and clean and and tucked in nicely with it, maybe a story or whatever, and then we stop doing that. And then we stay out later, and then we have trouble getting to sleep because we're overstimulated or whatever. We're studying or doing our, cramming for tests or whatever late into the night. Maybe we're working a night shift. All the things that affect our natural rhythms to sleep in the hours of darkness, which, before we had all this technology and 24-hour shopping channels and God knows what else, it's very hard to withdraw. You have to so consciously kind of back your way out of that. And I know at a lot of the retreats that we do, I love setting it up for sleep. We did some sleep qigong. I remember we might do a golden milk, a turmeric latte. There are so many things that we can do to prepare for restful sleep, whether it's cleaning out the bedroom, making sure it's not filled with, to-do lists or piles or something like that. Really keeping the place clean and aired nicely. You really have to facilitate your own sleep hygiene, don't you?
Absolutely. And then in the waking state, it's as one awakens, it's that beauty, that falling asleep, that moment and the moment of awakening, if possible, not to wake with an alarm, because that does alarm the whole system. I'm not saying, but, if we can do that at weekends and awaken gradually. And in that period, and again, this is patterns and habits, isn't it, of remembering the dreams. What is it? Maybe having a notepad nearby to maybe capture, because once you move out of bed, often the dreams they just disappear like magic.
Yeah.
We move from the dream state into time and space, because the first thing we often do is look at what time it is, look at the clock, and then open our eyes to see where we are. And so we then anchor ourselves, and then we move into the density of the present, where we are, from that beautiful lightness. So it's really, and I loved our conversation yesterday, Susie, about what's possible when we really fully appreciate what happens in dreamland, because it's still a very new area of science. There's a lot written on it, but it would be great fun to be able to experience and explore that, because, as you say quite rightly, we do it every night. And
there's a real missed opportunity, from what I've been researching anyway, that you can continue your practice into it. And another thing I often share with my clients and people that I work with is, if you feel like you don't have time to meditate, meditate. Just, coming out of the dream state, sliding up into like an upright position, and just resting in awareness as you arise in the morning, So people have so many misconceptions around, meditation, as if you have to have a big special room and cushions and certain things happening and altars. You can just slide up and lean against your headboard and really go into a beautiful state. And I think we need to understand those states within ourselves. And when we understand that I can create this, I can expand that state as I wake up, come out of the dream state, extend it a little bit longer, and plant some seeds. And this would be a really good segue just to wind back into the beginning of our conversation. And I suppose the title of this episode, which is, Voices of Light, this opportunity to create a new charter for the soul of humanity. But we have to begin as individuals, I guess. And it's kind of creating a new way of being, of waking up in the morning, and, and where that will take us as a soul collective, maybe moving forward. So I'm going to give you the last couple of minutes there, Sue, to really sum up your key point, or your, how where you're taking this next.
Thank you. Well, the real message is that we're living in a very powerful moment in history, and we have all the information we could possibly need and more at our fingertips. We have the ability to communicate beyond any other civilization that we know about. So bringing ourselves into the awareness of this uniqueness of our being alive at this time, and moving into a place where we can actually have a voice. I would really encourage anybody to use that voice if they wanted to connect with the Charter for Compassion directly. It's charterforcompassion.org. Mm-hmm. And it's there is an opportunity there's 3 questions that are being asked at the moment, and it goes straight into a document and you can leave or not leave your email address so that we can get in touch further, with the great ideas. but to be active, to be that active participant within this very powerful time in community, not to be despondent by actually what we're hearing from the external, acknowledging what's happening in the external. A lot of people are suffering because of it, but coming back into our own being, coming really back into our own individual uniqueness and being compassionate with ourselves. That is a huge point. The golden rule, treat others as you'd like to be treated. We maybe need to remember that sometimes we don't treat ourselves in the best possible light, and certainly not in grace. We can be very unkind to ourselves. So give ourselves a break and spend a bit more time saying, it's okay to care for myself. And this is what I can do. I can use the ness. But I'd love to just share a quote that a beautiful friend of mine, Christine, wrote about grace. And it says, "My virtue is grace, which draws from the universal source, power and might, then distributes it as light for all who care to embrace it." Let me read that again. "My virtue is grace, which draws from the universal source, power and might, then distributes it as light for all who care to embrace it." So it's there for all of us. Nobody's above or below. Nobody's any different in terms of wanting a kind, happy, contented, vibrant life. And we can do it. And we can do it for ourselves. We can do it for each other. And there is no other, really. We're all interconnected. We are all one.
This really feels like it's your legacy, Sue. Honestly, I've been a friend of yours for a long time now, and I've really witnessed your journey, and from the moments of mass mindfulness right up to today, and it's been such an inspiration for me personally, but I know for many people that we know and we've kind of been lucky enough to hang out together with. So it really is it's so clear now when you join up all the dots, not always knowing where you were being guided towards or what it was, but the trust that you have this unshakable trust.
Yeah.
And you're always coming from that place of love and compassion within yourself. And as you step off your mat or off your cushion or wherever you're doing your practice, you really are walking your talk. You're not just speaking it, you definitely are living it. So thank you so much.
Thank you for letting me share, and also to help me put even more of the little pieces together, because this is emergent, and the charter will be written by the 12th of November this year, the revised. So please, if you have anything that you want to share, it's not my voice. I'm the holistic steward. It's all of us. And then we can have a charter that is activated in our own hearts with each other and in our communities and for Mother Earth.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful way to end today's episode and maybe season 2. It's been a profound season, meeting such incredible voices, incredible conversations, and I feel like it's a lovely kind of full circle that you've come back today to have this, evolving conversation with us. So stay tuned for, what's coming up with Sue and the Charter for Compassion. I think Ramsey and Kathy and I will be back next week. We're just going to sum up our final season, but this is the last episode of the season, and season 3 will kick off again early in September, I believe, and we have some lovely guests coming in for that one too. But for now, with deep, huge gratitude, thank you, Sue, for your time, your wisdom, your generosity of your spirit, the beautiful sharing today. Thank you.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity, and have a lovely break and rest yourself and restore.
Thank you. Yeah, we have to do the self-care ourselves. It's an inside job. Thank you, Sue. Cheers.